Good morning. Welcome everybody to our June meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority. I've got a couple items from the chairman. The first item I'm going to read to the trust because it's a letter from Westminster Middle School in 8th grade, and that's the same age as my youngest grandson, so I was really taken back by the letter and the thought that went into it. And so if you all will give me a little latitude here, I'd like to read the letter. Hello, I'm writing you about a group of 14 of my fellow 8th graders that I have created called Wheels to Work. We have been studying poverty throughout the year and have learned that according to the Brookings Institute report, if you have a high school diploma, do not have children until you're 21 and married and have one full-time worker in the family, there is only a 2% chance that you will end up in poverty. We realize that a lot of hard-working families meet the first two requirements but can't seem to get a job. Transportation is one of the greatest barriers to getting a job. This is where we would come in. Our goal is to connect providers of transportation with the people who need transportation the most. We've been researching different methods of viable transportation for people living in poverty, which is how we came upon Embark. We are hoping that as a group we would be able to purchase passes in bulk for those who need passes. We are wondering if we could be able to lower the rates of those looking for work through our program. Once they get a job, they will be able to pay full fare. If we could talk to you as a group, that would be wonderful. I hope we continue talking in the future. Well, I was just very moved by this, and certainly will tell you that the chairman will recommend to the trust that we provide discounted passes. And right now I'd like to come down front and have the students that are here, and I've got a couple questions, so I'm going to put you on the spot. But okay. Would you all like to come? What students are here? But I want to say a couple words that I was really impressed with what you all are doing, and particularly since you're the same age as my youngest grandson. So, and teacher, Mr. Is it Vernon? Yes. You know, and I'm sure you had a lot of input into this. But I've got two questions. What prompted you all to do this study, and then how are you going to pay for it?
Okay. All right. I'm Sophia Blaschke. What prompted us to do this study?
Yes.
To start this organization? As we said in the letter, we've been studying kind of poverty and all of its causes throughout the year, and we have kind of observed that in Oklahoma. Oh, okay. As we said before, that the three main causes of poverty, two of them are, I guess, met by quite a few people in Oklahoma City, but quite a few of them are unable to go to work because of a lack of transportation, is what we study. And at first we thought we were going to try and do something to help the Homeless Alliance? Work with the Homeless Alliance, and we thought we were going to do something regarding the, I forgot the word, people who are kind of standing on the side of the street just asking for money. And we thought we were going to do something providing transportation and work for them, but as we studied, we found out that would be quite difficult. So now we're just going to try and work generally people who are looking for work in Oklahoma City.
If we do, which I'm sure we will, provide the discounted passes, what fundraising project or how do you all intend to help pay for that?
Well, last year in 7th grade, our grade started a project called, it was a business project where the students all get in groups of 4 and try and start a business within the school and kind of raise money for that by selling other products to other students. And so we've raised about $10,000 or $11,000 doing that, and 2 other groups in our grade have spent, I'm not sure how much, but about a little less than 2/3 of it, and we have about $5,000 or so to spend helping people looking for work or working in Oklahoma City with transportation.
All right. Well, I would say the chairman is going to recommend to the trust we do this. We'll have to bring a board item at our next meeting, but I can assure you the board's going to pass it. No, okay, thank you. And I understand you're all going to take a streetcar ride. Have you been on the streetcar?
I haven't.
Well, I want you all to look right on the streetcar. So we've got a streetcar hat for you. And how many more are in your, I may not have enough for the whole.
There's about 15 of us.
Well, then you're going to have to vote on who your favorite are, because I've only got 8 or 9 here, sorry.
Alexander Oldfield. And so should we go ahead and do our speech, or? All right. Sorry.
No problem.
So the Westminster class of 2019 raised over $10,000 last year in a student-run business project as the 7th graders. With the money raised, we sought to do something that would make a positive change in Oklahoma City. After research and discussion, we came to a conclusion that transportation is one of the most overlooked yet important keys to finding and maintaining employment. Without convenient and affordable transportation, it is nearly impossible to find a stable income and to climb out of poverty. With that knowledge, the Westminster class of 2019 decided to contribute to our community by creating the Wheels to Work, an organization of students dedicated to providing affordable transportation to needy people who are working or who are looking for work.
Yes, a little bit. In order to complete our mission, we are trying to connect 3 modes of transportation. Bicycles, provided by a ministry known as Chain Reaction, a taxi-like company called Senderide, and, hopefully, yourselves in Copta. Ultimately, our plan with Copta is to purchase bus passes from Embark and give them to organizations we support, such as Reimburse and the Veterans Administration of Oklahoma City. We came here today to request an introductory rate for your 1-week unlimited passes. We noticed that the regular price is $14. However, due to our big goals and limited funds, it would be extremely advantageous and beneficial that we receive the bus passes at a reduced fare. We know that asking for a reduced fare is a big request and can be out of a business's budget. However, with the extra money we would save, Wheels to Work could provide transportation to many other people in need and get us closer to reaching our goal.
I don't know if I have enough authority to give you the passes. We may have to charge you something for them. But anyway, well, congratulations on a great project. Mr. Vernon, congratulations on what you've done with these students. Have you all just graduated from 7th grade going into the 8th grade, or you graduated from the 8th grade?
We just graduated from the 8th grade.
So you'll be able to continue to promote this program even though you're going into high school now. All right.
We're going to meet every, I think it's every other week or so in high school to continue to work on this organization.
Good luck in high school. As I told my grandson, you're on the bottom of the totem pole now, but you'll work your way up. So, all right. Thank you all for coming. All right, one more showed item. Greg Little with the Public Works is going to give us just a brief update on our CNG facility.
That's not Greg Little.
Oh. No, instead of Greg Little, you got Jim Llewellyn. I'm also with the Public Works Department.
Welcome, Jim.
Well, they just told me who was going to be here.
No, that's fine. On our CNG fueling station, that's a picture of the site before the work began. We awarded a contract on November 2nd in the amount of $3,265,322. They began construction April 22nd. The delay was basically related to the lead time on getting the CNG fueling equipment. Right now, the scheduled completion date is September 12th, 2019. If we go to the next picture, That's another picture of the site looking the opposite direction. And the next picture, that's where they've started construction. That's grading, and I think the next picture has them putting down the subbase, yes. They've started stabilization and putting in the base. Construction will consist of a new driveway with RFID access control from South Miller into the fueling area. The fueling station will have a pre-manufactured canopy over it, and once it's complete, we will be able to fuel 2 buses in about 11 minutes. There's consideration for public access to the site at some point in the future, but that hasn't been all worked out yet. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Will it be used for other city vehicles or just Copta?
I believe right now that it's just going to be for Copta.
Okay, but we're refueling at some other city location now.
We have a CNG fueling station at the Central Maintenance Facility down at Southwest 15th in Portland, and then there's also a CNG fueling facility for solid waste up on North Portland. Okay. I believe those are the only ones the city operates right now.
Okay, all right. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, do we have any citizens to be heard this morning? If not, we have 3 minutes, approval of the minutes of the Copta board meeting held on May 3rd, and approval of minutes of the Joint Parking and Finance Committee held on May 23rd, and another Joint Transportation and Finance meeting held on June 4th. Do the trustees have any revisions or questions on any of the minutes? If not, I would hear a motion to approve those 3 minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Consent docket. 6 items on the consent docket. Are there any of the items that the trustees would like discussion on? Then I'd hear a motion to approve our consent docket. All in favor? Opposed? All right, items for individual consideration. It's kind of lengthy, and we'll try to get through it in a timely manner maybe, but we'll give it a shot. Items A and B are agreement with Hobby Lobby to receive 1 acre of land near Hamby and Reno, and then item B is to negotiate the purchase of 1.19 acres of undeveloped land adjacent to that 1 acre for future transit hub. So, Jason, if you'd like to speak to these two.
Yes, I'll try to quickly summarize this project, but as you mentioned, item 6A is actually approval of a donation agreement where Hobby Lobby will donate 1 acre of land to Cotpa. Cotpa will then in turn use that property to construct a permanent transit hub at that location of Hamby and Reno. And as you're familiar, if you're not as familiar with the location of Hamby, think about Rockwell and MacArthur. Hamby's between those 2 main streets there. And so really what this project enables us to do is continue to move forward some of the recommendations and the transit system analysis that Nelson Nygaard completed for us. As you'll recall, one of the recommendations or changes we made when we implemented those system improvements was we created a mini hub. We call it the Reno Mini Hub out at Greenfield Center Place, which is basically just east of this location that we're talking about receiving the donated land. And that mini hub is actually, aside from the downtown transit center, that is the busiest stop in the Embark system. We have over 300 boardings a day. We have 7 buses that pulse at that location during every hour during the weekday. So when you think about our customers, the other pedestrians that are in that area that are going to the different places to shop, you think about our bus traffic, the automobile traffic. I mean, it can be a pretty congested location. Hobby Lobby approached us back in 2018 and asked us about what our future plans were for that location. And of course, our future plans have always been, someday we'd like to develop that into more than what it is today. Basically, today it is a street with 2 bus shelters on each side, and our buses serve that location in that way. And so working with Hobby Lobby, again, they agreed to try to purchase an acre of land in close proximity, donate that to Cotpa for the facility. Then item 6B is authorization for the administrator to begin negotiating for an additional 1.19 acres next to the 1 acre that Hobby Lobby is trying to donate to us. That would give Cotpa, if all that comes to fruition, a little over 2 acres there right off of Reno, and would really, and this was brought to the Transportation Committee, and I think, the point there was that it really sets Cotpa up for the future. It would allow additional property, so if the permanent hub that we're anticipating constructing has to be expanded, we would have some room to expand it. When we think about the 2005 fixed guideway study and the fact that there's a bus rapid transit corridor recommended right there on Reno, this could potentially be a great location for a park and ride. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and again, being able to secure that land in addition to the 1 acre that's being donated really just, I think, sets us up for the future. Just quickly, the agreement with Hobby Lobby is in your packet. I'll highlight the terms for you, but basically after the agreement is executed, Hobby Lobby has 120 days to purchase the land. Once Hobby Lobby has an agreement with the seller, Embark has 31 days to do our inspection and due diligence. That can be extended upon our request. Within 90 days of closing, we will relocate our existing mini hub to the new location, and then, of course, we'll accept the property as is. So I will mention, too, at this point, there are no costs associated with either one of these items, but, of course, if we accept the donated land, we build a permanent structure there, there will be additional items that we'll bring to the board for consideration as we begin looking at engineering and construction.
Well, after the rain of yesterday, if we didn't flood there, then I'd think this would help our environmental impact study that that it isn't going to flood. So, yeah. All right. Any questions? Then do I have a motion to approve item A? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item B?
Yes.
No. I have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I thought you discussed that.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Okay.
Approval of item B.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item C is approval of a memorandum of agreement between the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust and Copta for the Santa Fe parking garage to reimburse Copta $1,250,000.
Yeah, so this item here, as you mentioned, it's a memorandum of agreement with the Economic Development Trust. It's really the final stage in the process that we began back in 2016 when we were looking at the improvements to the Santa Fe garage for the UCO tenant space. As you'll recall, when we developed that construction budget, we had $1 million of TIF reimbursement worked into that project. That $1 million was approved back in September of 2016 by the Tax Increment Review Committee. It was approved by City Council in November of 2016. Then as the project progressed and we received bids, the bids came in actually $500,000 over what our budget was. UCO ended up basically covering half of that overage, $250,000, and then that left us another $250,000 that we really needed in order to complete the project. We went back to the Tax Increment Review Committee. They approved an additional $250,000 in February of 2019. Council approved it in March of 2019. And so this is kind of, again, the final stage in that process where this will actually be an agreement between Cotpa and OSED to receive that reimbursement. And with the project wrapping up this summer, we need to have this agreement in place so we can officially request that reimbursement.
When we were reviewing budgets on that construction and after selling the garage and Copta continued to pay all the expense, was this $1,250,000 taken into account in that?
Yes, we've always had
always knew that was going to be a reimbursement.
Anticipated this reimbursement coming.
Okay. All right, any questions? Then I'd have a motion to approve item C.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item D is a resolution authorizing the administrator to negotiate a contract for our engineering design services for the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit Project. The contractor engineering firm, HNTB, after review by the committee, was the one that was recommended, and to negotiate a contract, estimated cost not to exceed $1.9 million.
Right, so this item is really a continuation of the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit corridor that we've been working on now for a few years, one that we've received a build grant for, and this, with approval of this item, it continues to move that project forward. As mentioned, with the assistance of the Public Works Department, we issued a request for qualifications for engineering services. We need an architectural engineering firm to help us with preliminary engineering as well as final engineering, helping us prepare the construction bid documents, basically the same services we typically require of A&Es. We had two proposers. We had HNTB and then we had CH Guernsey and Company. The selection committee actually met on May 28th, and that selection committee did consist of representative from Public Works, from the city manager's office, from our department. HNTB was selected as the best proposal, and so again, with authorization of this item, we will begin negotiations. The estimated cost of $1.9 million is for that kind of that entire scope that I generally described, and it will be funded through a combination of federal grants and our transit capital reserves.
Okay. Any questions? Then I'd hear a motion to approve item D.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item E is a change order number 4 to the Santa Fe parking garage, white box and tenant improvements of $12,698.
So again, this is our fourth change order on the Santa Fe project. We do anticipate wrapping it up hopefully quickly. Our targeted date for substantial completion is still July 19th. But again, this is our fourth change order. We've had, of the 3 previous change orders, you'll recall we've had discussions. We've really tried to keep within that original budget, the original contract amount of just over $2.7 million. And through the first 3 change orders, we've successfully been able to do that. With this change order here, which is $12,698, that will actually put us $6,500 over the original contract amount. We're talking basically 0.23% over the contract. So still very, very close to our goal of maintaining that original contract amount. There are 9 items in this change order. All of the detail is provided in your packet. Just quickly, some of the items are deducts. For example, we have a couple of items that are deducting some cabling that's related to the technology systems that are in the space. We do, however, have some additions. One is a 60-foot, 2-inch water line. We had a floor in one of the restrooms that we had to level in order to install tile. There's some installation of a couple of TV boxes. So again, it's none of the items are significant by themselves, but the 9 of them add up to $12,698. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions on the change order.
Well, if there are none, I would hear a motion to approve item E.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item F, a little long to read, but approval of an agreement with the Community Transportation Association of America for provision of transportation services and oversight of a grant increasing successful foster care parent-child reunification. So I'd like to just briefly update us on that.
So this item here is another unique opportunity for Embark and the Trust. This will be basically another new transportation service that we'll be focusing on. Just a brief history on this. Back in 2018, the Arnell Family Foundation, they basically issued a notice of grant funding opportunity, and they were looking for innovative transportation solutions to help basically reunite families that were in the foster care program. As you know, many of the parents that are in that program, they're required to complete different types of training and classes and even, visitation with the children. And transportation is, one of the main obstacles for the parents to be able to complete some of those programs. So Embark partnered with CTAA, the Community Transportation Association of America, along with the Oklahoma Transit Association, submitted a project, and we were the successful proposer for the grant funds. The grant is actually awarded to CTAA. This agreement here is an agreement between Embark and CTAA that spells out each party's responsibilities. Essentially, what we will do is manage the transportation services and the grant oversight. And what that really will involve is developing a program that combines a first mile, last mile connection for the parents within the program, in many cases to our existing bus routes. And so with that, we are anticipating about $100,000 this first year of expenses. Some of that is staff time, but that will be reimbursed from the grant. And I think I failed to mention, but the grant itself is $1 million grant over 4 years. So this is a program that isn't just a one-year pilot. I mean, we'll be looking at providing these services in the coming years.
All right.
I move approval of the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item G and H, you might kind of discuss, but it's the Copta's fiscal year 2020 operating budget and update of the fiscal year 2019-2023 capital improvements, which the Finance Committee met on this week and approved both of these. So.
Right, yep. So as we typically do, we always take the operating budget and the capital plan to the Finance Committee ahead of the trust. I'll start with item 6G. So this is our operating budget, and you have a breakdown of the operating budget in your packet, but basically for fiscal year 2020, we're looking at a $43 million budget. When you look at how that budget is broken down among our family of services, the proposed budget for bus transit service is $30,508,484. That's a 3.2% increase from the previous year. The Oklahoma City streetcar budget is $5,462,077. That's a 32.5% increase from the previous year. But keep in mind, too, this budget includes full Sunday service as well as full operations for an entire calendar year. So that's the main difference there. On the Embark River Operations budget, we're looking at $939,021, representing a 1% increase. The bike share program, $226,845. This is a 1.5% increase. And looking at our parking services budget, it's $5,880,124. This does represent a 32.7% reduction. And you'll notice with the budget document that's provided, it's pretty obvious where those changes come from. But basically, that reduction in the budget accounts for the fact that we do not have the operating revenue from the Santa Fe garage any longer. And then in this current year budget, we had, a one-time budgeted expense of receiving those sales proceeds from the Santa Fe parking garage, transferring those to our capital reserves, and that transaction is not contemplated in the 20 budget at all. So that's the significant variance there. I have one other thing I just wanted to mention. When we were in Finance Committee, we were talking about the bus transit budget. I pointed out that the services had increased by about $150,000 and mentioned that was due in part to some of our security expenses. Our security expenses have increased. However, upon further review, that $151,000 increase is really related to primarily our transfer back to the city cash fund for some costs associated with staffing and chargebacks and those kinds of things. So I just wanted to clarify that. So that's really the This quick summary of the operating budget, again, we spent quite a bit of time in the Finance Committee talking about that and had a presentation for the committee. I'll just go ahead and talk about the 5-year capital plan as well. We update our 5-year capital plan each year. This is what we would consider to be kind of our off year, where we provide more of an update. Our last really significant overhaul of our capital plan was back in 19, and so that's why this is an update to the 19 through 2023 capital plan. But again, just sharing with you the highlights. The entire 5-year capital plan reflects over $96 million worth of capital expenditures. We do anticipate having all but about $2 million of those capital projects funded. Some of the adjustments that we made this year to the capital plan is we did have better cost estimates for the new convention center parking garage, and we actually have an item on the agenda today that moves that project further along. We added the Northwest BRT to our 5-year capital plan. We increased the funding for bus shelters in the 5-year capital plan. So those are the type of adjustments that we made, and again, we went through it in more detail in the Finance Committee. Overall, the transit capital budget is $58.8 million. The parking capital budget, $34.7 million. And then the river cruise budget is a $2.5 million capital budget. And again, as you'll recall, we have a competitive grant that's going to allow us to construct an additional landing and make some improvements to the existing Meridian facilities. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions on the budget or the 5-year capital plan.
Any questions by any of the trustees? Then I'd hear a motion to approve item G.
Move the item.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then item H.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item I, which I think is one of the biggest items on our individual consideration docket today, is approval of 90% plans and specifications for the Convention Center parking garage and authorizing the administrator to approve final plans and advertise and release the bidding documents.
Yes, so for sure, this is the biggest project on our agenda today, and probably for the coming year, certainly. But we're excited about getting to this point in the project. As you'll recall, I think everyone here has been at one of the 2 parking committee meetings where we looked at the design for the Convention Center parking garage. With the last parking committee that we held, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. At that parking committee meeting, we received the preliminary report and approved the 90% plans at that time. And so with approval of this item, again, the trust is approving 90% plans. As the 100% plans are reviewed by Public Works and Development Services and finalized, this item authorizes the administrator to go ahead and approve those 100% plans and advertise the project for construction bids. We anticipate being able to award a contract in August. As you can see, the estimated cost of the garage is just under $29 million. And as we've mentioned in the parking committee meeting several times, we've looked at the funding plan. The majority of this garage will be funded with sales proceeds from the Santa Fe parking garage, with the remainder coming from our existing capital reserves on the parking side of our business.
All right. Well, it's taken a while to get to this point in time, but we're ready to move to the final phase. So I'd hear a motion to approve item I.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Item J is to enter into executive session, and I would hear a motion to move that to the end of our meeting, and we need a voice vote.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, into our financial reports, ratification of payroll and vendor claims. Any items on there that the trustees have a question about? If not, I would have a motion to ratify those claims.
Move the item.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our financial reports received Copta schedule of revenue and expenditures expenditures, budget to actual for the 10 months. We're getting close to the end of our fiscal year, so
We are.
we'll see how in line these are.
We'll keep the comments short on the financials. I know we have some presentations and executive session, but I'll just probably touch on the transportation, parking, and streetcar. So starting on page 2, our transportation operations, just point out that our total revenues are basically right in line with our budget as far as what we'd anticipated through April of 2019. Probably the two variances to look at would be our fare box revenue. We are just about $200,000 less in fare box revenue than what we had estimated, so we're at 85% of our budget. That is offset by our federal grant revenue reimbursement, which is actually about $117,000 over what we had budgeted. Looking on the expenditure side, we're at about 94% of what we had expected, with the majority of the savings continuing to be in personal services. But we actually have, at this point in the fiscal year, savings in each one of those expenditure categories: other services, fees, supplies, and fuel. On the next page, page 3, this is our parking operations. Again, I know we've talked about this probably in every trust meeting over the last few months, but I just continue to point out that our revenues, our operating revenues, are under budget. We're about $226,000 less than what we had anticipated, and that is really all just a factor of less monthly contracted parkers. And you can see that in our vacancy rate in the parking report as well. However, with that said, our expenditures are also under budget. They're under budget through April by $444,000, giving us a operating income, revenues in excess of expenditures of just about $2.5 million. I think I mentioned this before as well, but staff is continuing to monitor that operating revenue along with our expenditures, and especially going into the next fiscal year, and our budget reflects that our revenues and our expenditures are much closer than what we've seen in the past, and we're going to continue to see that until our vacancy rate improves and until the convention center parking garage is brought online and we start receiving some revenue from that garage. So nothing to be alarmed about, other than just it's a little bit different financial picture than what we've seen in the past. And then maybe my last comment, looking at streetcar operations, I'd like to just direct your attention to the expenditure section primarily. The streetcar operations line there, where we have an annual budget of $2.9 million, you can see through April we're roughly at $2 million of that. That includes payments to Herzog Transit Services for streetcar operations through February. Of the budget to actuals that we're looking at, the streetcar operations, we're going to be really close on the budget. So staff is continuing to look at that. There's a possibility we may be bringing a small budget amendment back to the trust in July, but again, we're still conducting that analysis. Primary reason is, one, it's our first year of trying to budget for streetcar operations, but we've had some expenses too that have been over budget. I've mentioned our security, so some things like that. We had snow removal and such this winter. We had to activate our emergency operations plan, I think 3 times, once for training purposes and twice for actual snow and ice events. So all those are impacting the budget, but we'll have more information during the July meeting. I'm glad to answer any other questions.
Well, surely I think Laura and Kenny would agree that the staff's done a pretty good job on budgeting, and it's awful close. So any other questions? Yes. Then I'd have a motion to approve our financial report. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, we've got 3 program reports. The first is a streetcar report. Are you ever going to get by where you don't have to give a report every meeting?
I hope not.
Oh, okay.
I love it, yeah. Well, good morning.
Morning.
See, nobody floated away yesterday with all the rains and stuff. Happy to report we had no delays in service. We were very lucky. Glad to see clear skies and sunshine today. I'll jump right into it. So the past couple of months I've been talking about the TSP, the Transit Signal Prioritization, how we've been working to implement the next phase. Well, we've implemented the next phase, and I've got a quick video here, but I want to set the stage before we play it. So I'm standing on the north side of Sheridan, looking back to the west toward Robinson. The streetcar is at the Century Center stop, stop 20. So basically, we've installed TSP at the Sheridan-Robinson intersection and at the Sheridan and E.K. Gaylord intersection. And so what that does is it allows us to be able to check into the Sheridan and Robinson intersection faster, so we get through that intersection a little quicker. But it also allows for a checkout at that intersection, so that puts the intersection back into the auto pedestrian cycle a little bit quicker so that we can get traffic moving a little faster there. But then also the Sheridan E.K. Gaylord transit signal prioritization, we've got that zone pulled all the way back to this stop. So that allows us to get through that entire corridor, basically going from stop 20 to stop 21 uninterrupted without having to stop at the Sheridan Broadway intersection and the Sheridan E.K. Gaylord intersection. So we get that throughput there. If we had to stop, there's a 60-second delay at the Sheridan Broadway intersection and a 2-minute delay at the Sheridan E.K. Gaylord intersection. So there's a potential for a 3-minute delay if we got caught at each intersection. So it's a huge improvement for us. So we can go ahead and play that video real quick. See the holds the light first there at Sheridan and Broadway, but able to make it through that intersection. Civil speed. We approach this switch, we slow down, we go fire speed. We get light, Sheridan, straight into Bricktown. That's my Dead Center.
Barely makes it under there, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's my Dead Center Film Festival
Okay.
project there. If we can go ahead and roll.
So Jesse, I really like the TSP application, but do we anticipate or has it caused any accidents related to other people running into the streetcar?
No.
When they're anticipating that they're going to have a green and it's red for them?
No, we haven't experienced any accidents due to implementing TSP at all.
Okay.
So next slide here is, so the Oklahoma City Streetcar has been working with Development Services and Public Works, been working together to try to streamline the permitting procedure. So basically, someone would submit for a permit, and then the Oklahoma City Streetcar would become one of the sign-offs for that permit. And they're working to switch that over to all electronic, so basically we would receive an email or a notification that plans are ready for review. We'd be able to look at them and be able to review them a little quicker and get that permitting procedure moved along a little faster there.
What kind of permit? I'm not.
So anyone that's applying for a permit along the streetcar route, we would want to take a look at those drawings to make sure that they're not going to have equipment that could swing out into the streetcar safe zone.
Well, and sometimes from time to time, a run will submit an application to close streets.
Right.
And we want to make sure that our transportation system is still able to operate even with closed streets. You know, if you're driving a bus, you can find a detour around it. It's kind of hard for the streetcar to take another path. So
Exactly.
we want to make sure that anyone who programs an event in an area where the streetcar runs is aware of the safety requirements so that we can continue to operate the streetcar.
How about the bicycle race they had last week or week before? Did that impact our operations at all?
It didn't. So we had worked with them to develop a new race that they had in an auto alley, and they ended up not using that. So it actually didn't impact us at all. But even if they had used the new race course that we had worked with them to develop, it wouldn't have impacted us either. So we're constantly working with the races and any parades, those types of things, to make sure that the streetcar is not impacted. Okay. So I had the opportunity, one of my favorite things to do is give a tour of the storage and maintenance facility. So I had an opportunity to give the Building Owners Management Association a tour of the streetcar facility, give them, show them around the OCC how everything works, how we're working on our schedules, and give them a tour of the streetcar. But one of my favorite things to do when we do these tours is a lot of times there's people that have never ridden the streetcar, don't know anything about it, and so they get to see the behind-the-scenes stuff. This was right before the Ariana Grande concert. Several of the moms were taking their daughters to the concert, and they actually were like, oh, yeah, this is awesome. So we can actually take the streetcar right to the Chesapeake Arena? I'm like, absolutely. Here's how you do it, and was able to show them how to use it and how to use the ticket vending machines. So I love getting a chance to do these tours. Another thing that we were lucky to have is Tricia and Travis from the Cincinnati Bell Connector. They traveled to Oklahoma City, took a look at our streetcar system. Travis is kind of basically the Jesse for the Cincinnati Bell Connector. They didn't have anybody that was really doing that before. It was more of like the Public Works Department and SORTA. They were there, and they were just kind of, oh, there's the streetcar system, hope it goes well. So now they've brought him on board to kind of oversee the operations there, hoping that they'll be able to improve service there. So he came to Oklahoma City. He's actually from Oklahoma City and worked at Devon, and so he was here for 2 years, met his wife, then they moved to Cincinnati, and now he's working for Cincinnati Bell Connector. So it was a pleasure to have him here and give him a tour of the system. What was kind of cool was while we were giving a tour of the system, there was also a student on board of the streetcar that was doing a film project. They're like, hey, who are you? And I told them who I was and stuff, and they did a quick interview of me, so now I'm in a school project too, so it's pretty awesome. So one of the, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, another thing that we're doing, continuing to do, is working with contractors along the route. So this is wind construction. They're working on the improvements there underneath the bridge, so they're installing better lighting, painting the roof structure, and working on the ramps that are going underneath the bridge. So we're constantly working with contractors that are near the streetcar alignment. We're still providing our classes every Thursday at 9 a.m. for track access training, basically teaching people how to work around the streetcar alignment. If you're going to be working near it, you need to have a spotter or a flagger, those types of things, and making sure that everyone's aware so that we don't have someone not realize that the rails meant that there's a streetcar coming by and that they could possibly step out in front of a streetcar by accident. So we're constantly working with contractors along the route. We're continuing our third Friday free, so we're coming up on June 21st here, free Friday, so make sure you get out there and ride. And you may have heard something about this. There was some window washers that were out there, unfortunately, swinging around the Devon Energy Center. So what happened there was it appeared that part of their crane mechanism failed, which caused the lift there to start swinging around, and it was actually making contact with the building, breaking out glass and doing some damage to the metal pieces that kind of hold the glass in. And it was glass and metal structures were falling, and so Oklahoma City Fire Department and police, they shut down the area immediately. So we essentially were shut down around 8:02 on May 15th. The fire department got the basket pulled back in within 30 minutes, and then Devon began their inspections of the building, making sure that it was safe for everyone. There were still pieces of glass that had the potential to fall, and so we worked with Devon and Public Works to try to get those areas opened back up as soon as possible. We had our sweeper ready to go as soon as they opened it up so we could sweep the track and get any glass out of the roadway. And obviously Public Works were out there manually with brooms getting the area cleaned up. Before we went into service, we went out and did a safety inspection of all the track switches and the platforms near the area to make sure that it was safe for our riders. And then as soon as they gave the green light, we put our streetcars back into service. So we were shut down. How do we supplement service? So we implemented our bus bridge. Per our plans that we've submitted to ODOT, if we're shut down for an extended period of time, we'll implement our bus bridge. And so we've got 3 of these cutaway buses that we use for that bus bridge. Basically, we go out and we drive the streetcar route, picking up any passengers that are still expecting service, and or take them to their destinations. But we wanted to make sure that we could get that information out to our riders. So how do we do that? So all those pylons that are on the streetcar platforms, they have a way for us to be able to push messaging. So on the left there, you see our very first message that we pushed out as soon as we were shut down, letting people know that the downtown loop service was delayed. Expect the bus bridge. And then we always push out notices on our Twitter feed, all of our social media feeds. And then after we kind of got our head wrapped around what was going on and how long that shutdown was going to take, we were able to provide more information on our pylons, basically, stating that our bus bridge was going to be implemented, here's the reasons why, and the streets that were shut down. So we'll jump into ridership. So May, we saw a little bit of a decrease in our ridership there. We like to see it closer to the 30,000 mark. You can see our ridership by month there, kind of seeing the wave. Obviously, in the summer months, we're expecting it to be higher.
Maybe you're going to say this already, but that doesn't extrapolate what would the ridership have been in that week that it was shut down, does it?
Perfect segue, as always. Yep. So next slide, this is our ridership by day for the whole month of May. If you take a look there in the middle, from May 15th to May 20th, so basically from 8:02 a.m. on May 15th until about 12:47 on May 20th, we were shut down, right? So we weren't able to, we weren't expecting the same ridership we would be if we were actually running our streetcars. You can see on the 15th we had 52 riders, and you can kind of see that wave there. A little bit of increase there on Saturday, up to 133. If you look kind of in the background in the shaded area, that's what we anticipated our ridership to be based on the previous 2 weeks of May, basically averaging those days out. You can see that we took a pretty substantial hit there on our ridership numbers.
So what would you have estimated that 22,582 would have been?
It would have been
at or above the 29,660 from the previous?
It would have been slightly below, but it would have been a lot closer, yeah.
Okay.
So at our last board meeting, you asked about fare compliance, and so this graph here shows our fare compliance from February to May. So basically, we started implementing our fares in February. You can see that obviously as soon as we started implementing it, some people weren't quite aware that now we're charging fares, and so that's why it's slightly higher at 4.4%. But as we go along, you can see that people are getting more used to it, knowing that they need to purchase a ticket. And so for the month of May, we were at 2.2% non-compliance there. Okay. On-time performance. Last board meeting, you also asked about on-time performance. I mentioned that we were hovering right around 97, 98%, so this takes into account the Bricktown loop. So I need to take a quick second to explain why that brings our on-time performance down. So essentially, you've got the downtown car that is entering into the Bricktown loop every 15, 16, 17 minutes, and so every time that happens, that Bricktown car is also on that loop, and so to keep our spacing, about every hour, that Bricktown car loses a trip, right? Because the downtown car comes into the loop, that Bricktown car will slow roll through the stops, basically increasing that spacing. And so about every hour, because we have those 3 or 4 cars entering into the Bricktown loop, that Bricktown car loses a trip. So that's why we're slightly lower than 98% that I shared last month. Okay. With that, I'll take any questions.
Jesse, I'm sorry, just assuming the 81% reflected the implementation of the bus bridge.
Sorry, yeah, absolutely right. So like Jason said, in May we've got 81% there. That's essentially because we lost that week of ridership, so we weren't providing any rides on the streetcar, and we went ahead and tracked it as missed trips, and so that's why our ridership was down, or our on-time performance was down to 81%.
With the signal prioritization, has your loop speed, have you adjusted that tighter?
Yes, absolutely. So with
has it shown a positive?
It has,
impact?
yeah, for sure. So we've done some initial tests, and we're looking that, like I mentioned earlier, it looks like we're saving about potentially about 1.5 minutes on the Bricktown loop. Of course, I say 1.5 minutes, but that takes into account the delay times at the stop or at the lights. That doesn't mean that the streetcar pulls up to the light and immediately stops, and then they have to wait for the 60 seconds, right? So it could pull up, and it could already be in that cycle. So we're looking at probably closer to about 1 minute saved on the Bricktown loop, and that pulls back into the downtown loop also.
What about delays caused by cars parked over the line?
Right. So we got all of our parallel parking along the route painted. Corey's group helped us get all that painting done. And so we've seen our blockages as far as cars parking over the line drop substantially. I can bring those numbers to you next month, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Long-range plan update.
It's good to be able to be here to report progress, and I'll be very brief for today. In terms of the report, just wanted to say a few words about the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit project that you all have authorized the administrator to negotiate the contract on. You've heard about it before, basically that 8-mile route between the downtown and Northwest Expressway at Meridian. And we've been working on what's called the environmental clearance process, okay, the Nepa, National Environmental Policy Act clearance process. And as part of that, as we've looked at some options, we've actually looked some at kind of a quick downtown loop, which shows up in the map here. We've also paid a lot more attention to exactly where station stops should be, with a good emphasis on safety. Back when we were doing the Northwest Multimodal Concept Planning starting in 2015, we recognized that safety for pedestrians and bicyclists crossing the corridor, very, very important, and that will become even more important as we get further into design. There's really 32 locations that had to be cleared from an environmental standpoint. 26 of them are recommended to have some type of a station platform. And so that's kind of why Nepa on an item like this, because it affects so many spots, becomes a lot of detail. Well, I talked about pedestrian and crossing safety. Back in that 2014 planning, we realized that Classen, for the most part, has traffic signals, although there are a couple of places where there's no signal for a pedestrian. Northwest Expressway signalization for pedestrians and bicyclists is largely absent, and this is a lot of why we never really ran a bus route on Northwest Expressway. So the idea that emerged back then was either a two-stage crossing, which is basically this upper left photograph example you see, or the idea of a grade-separated crossing. And not everywhere, but in a couple of places, and that's actually the way the build grant was written, was to anticipate that. And during the NEPA process, what became a recommended idea for the route was at Independence and Northwest Expressway, think Baptist Hospital, okay? Instead of being back and forth across Independence there, the idea was, well, perhaps the route should really be on Independence going north and south. Well, as you see in that middle photograph on the left, Integris years ago invested in a grade-separated underpass there. That could become, obviously, a part of a project like this, but there are steps, okay? These have to be accessible for really all types of pedestrians and the like, so even if that was used, there'd have to be modifications because we do need to make sure we can accommodate people with disabilities and people with strollers, et cetera. The idea of that two-stage crossing, though, you see above is that Northwest Expressway and a lot of roads have 6 to 9 lanes of traffic to cross, so perhaps it's better to get halfway across to a median, especially for a lot of folks who aren't as fast, and then wait for the next cycle. Part of the planning has also been what to do at Penn Square. And the great thing about going into engineering design is we can take these ideas and become a lot more specific and really get it down to the details. But some type of potential underpass has continued to move forward in project advancement. That red dot line just gives you an approximate idea of where something like that might happen. But again, a lot of discussion needs to happen. And wherever there is this sort of crossing, you're always going to need that at-grade crossing as well. So without going into a lot of design details about Northwest BRT, I think this helps everybody understand just how important a crossing is for a transit system. Great for all pedestrians and bicyclists, but really necessary there. Just to kind of give you a little sense, the environmental documentation has all now been submitted to the federal government. There are a lot of detailed reports that you see in those bulletins about noise assessment and various things. But basically, just yesterday, Federal Transit sent a finding of no adverse effect to the State Historic Preservation Office. And that's really an important step. We think we're about a month away from receiving final clearance. So that's good. As part of the process, a lot of work was done to just advance the project, to get into items that help with the environmental process, but really help us move forward in design. Okay, just a few words about other planning activities, things that really don't relate to Northwest BRT, is that in March, as you might know, Cotpa was awarded about $750,000 to buy a couple of buses through what's called Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG funds. And really we had worked in conjunction with a lot of other entities last last summer to revise the criteria for how projects are scored and how funds are awarded so that transit could be more competitive, and it worked. But this summer that process will start again, and so we will work with those other entities to try to make sure transit is in a good competitive position. Program coordination. You know, so many of we get quite a bit of federal funding to help with our programs, so there's a lot of things that we do to help advance federal policies. Disadvantaged business enterprises is one. First year, we've actually met our DBE goal in a few, and we're on a pretty good track this year based on the report we submitted last month. But some of we've actually are talking to some of our subcontractors who probably would qualify and encouraging them to apply. And then we have DBEs who approach us. So we continue to try to find a way to expend our federal funds with some DBEs. And then we were asked long ago to put together a kind of a quarterly coordination meeting among transit providers, and we've done that for several years. We had a good meeting in Norman just this week. We do that quarterly. We'll host that in September. And then finally, the Mayor's Committee on Disability Concerns, not an advocacy group, really more of a clearinghouse. They were in need of some strategic planning assistance, and so we planned for and basically put on an all-day event one Saturday to help them get more focused and kind of continue to work with them, kind of steward their processes. And so with that, that's basically my report. Be glad to answer any questions.
Just a brief comment on the Regional Transit Authority and what's going on right now.
Well, you know, they met in April. You know, Mr. Fairbrush may want to give you a little bit more insight on just where that's going. I just know that they're making some progress.
I can add just a little bit to that, but yeah, the RTA board obviously has been established. They're meeting regularly for their monthly meetings, and really right now the emphasis is on working with the consultant the RTA through ACOG has hired to begin just evaluating that BNSF corridor, and looking in more detail how the rail alignment could potentially work in that right-of-way, and then really determining what are the next steps as far as engaging the railroad and bringing forth the concept of the rail to the railroad company. So moving along.
All right.
Is the block grant money that was awarded in March to add buses or to replace buses?
It's to add buses. And I believe this is actually the first time we've ever received any of these funds for buses. So,
also on RTA and that timeline, what kind of timeline are they on in terms of the consultant doing their work? When do they anticipate approaching BNSF? Or is there?
Yeah, I don't know that necessarily has been determined as far as when does the RTA engage the railroad company. I know that we're probably looking at a 3 to 5 year period here of just working with the railroad, updating the existing plans and such for the corridors.
All right, thank you. All right, our Marketing, Customer Relations, and Technology report.
Good morning.
Morning.
This morning I wanted to start with a program that we developed in partnership with the City Manager's Office early last fall, and that was to help promote getting people back into the businesses that were possibly impacted by the streetcar construction and some of the other things that were taking place at the time as well. We call it the Love the Loops campaign, and part of that campaign was kind of a contest, so to speak, of shop and win. And basically people would submit receipts to us that would be entered in a weekly drawing to receive a $250 gift card to one of those Love the Loop partners. And those are people who are residential areas around downtown, as well as our retail outlets and restaurants. And so just as an update, since we kicked off the program, we've had nearly 400 entries, people submitting their receipts. They take a picture of it, upload it to their website. And then we have a tool that randomly draws from that list of people who continue to put their receipts in. And so far, we've got 27 awarded out of the 32 weeks that we had committed to, which would take us through the end of this month. And just an interesting story, this gentleman here, he calls his Midtown apartment his lake house. So instead of having a lake house for the weekends, he and his wife come to downtown Oklahoma City, and they stay on the weekends in an apartment in Midtown, and they use a streetcar exclusively. They say they have annual passes, and so it was a treat for them to definitely win when they were telling us about their experiences here.
Lately, everyone in Oklahoma has a lake house.
You're right. It's been rough lately, hasn't it? Thankfully, his apartment is probably very dry. The campaign also includes other promotional efforts. We're producing these partner profile videos, 20 different videos that help kind of show the different things that you can do in the downtown area along the streetcar route. We also have an update on our streetcar sponsorships. We just recently added another sponsor, and that is Newcastle Casino. They just recently sponsored the Mickey Mantle. Just a reminder, the minimum requirement for these sponsorships is at least a 3-year commitment. We have one that's all the way up to 10 years and many that are about 5 years. So we're grateful for the support of our local businesses and taking this opportunity to be a part of the streetcar system. We have just 2 left, and we have both staff and our contractor working to round off and finish up those 2 spots, as well as to continue to pursue naming rights opportunities that would help supplement the revenue and operations of the streetcar service. Another thing that we did this spring was our rider survey, or our customer survey, and so we had that. We do that annually. These are just a couple of the items that Jason shared, also in the budget report, as well with City Council. But we will be hosting our CEO of ETC. They will be here in August to do a full report and presentation on that effort. A lot of the things that we have learned from that continue to help influence and shape decisions that are made about how we spend and how we ask for funding, and what are important improvements that we need to make and that are important to our customers. So this is a really good tool to help us gauge satisfaction and also where we might need to look to improve.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
I remember looking at this during the budget presentation to council. Is anyone specified when they say they want more frequent, later service on the weekend? But it doesn't seem like there's so much later service during the weekdays. Just more frequent service during the weekdays. But I'm not really seeing them say also.
The very first one is more weeknight buses.
Night.
Yeah, it just maybe a wording there that might have thrown it off.
I think, Councilman, the item that you saw during the budget presentation was the more general citizen survey. When Transit does their survey, they have the opportunity to delve more into what specific things people would like to see, and this is that opportunity to do that.
So we'll see a full report on that, and he's been here before, and he does presentations with City Council, a highly regarded researcher, and we appreciate their partnership here. Just another thing, some of this, what our staff has been doing over this last year, and so we counted up since July 1 how many social media posts have we published, and over 2,800 different pieces of content were produced and published for our different family of services. Obviously, Streetcar was a heavy hitter this year because of its launch, but we continue to see our content grow and become a little more dynamic with videos as well as blog type of content, and you'll see that progression this next month as well with that kind of content. One of the areas of focus that we are going to be looking at this next year is enhancing the customer experience through technology. So one of the things that we've been looking at is our website. It's nearly 5 years old, and what we'd like to do is take advantage of enhancing our trip planning tools for all of our modes and how the trip plan can consider from bike share, ferry, streetcar, and also consider where our parking garages are located for park and ride situations, as well as our bus system. There's a new and advanced technology that continues to improve every year, and so we want to take advantage of those new technologies and implement them through our trip planning tools as well. Related to that is also the texting tool. So right now you are able to text a bus stop ID to a specific number, and it will tell you the next 3 arrival times for that bus stop. And what we want to do, what we see here is that we've been seeing a usage, this is over the last year here, and what we want to do is continue to see that grow because it helps improve the customer wait time. You can choose to wait a little differently if you know when the next bus will be arriving. So just as a total number, this last year we saw about 2,500 or 21,400 text come through, and we have the ability to segment out the text where someone didn't put the number just right, and these are successful texts that we received. So this is how many times it helped someone else plan their trip, know where they want to go. One of the things we've heard back from customers, though, is they want it's a little cumbersome now because you have to get the kind of a formula just right to get the right text to come back to you. So we are working right now with a vendor and contractor that we have on board with us, and they will, we're simplifying it. Basically, all you have to do is text a number and the bus ID number that is at each stop. Instead of having right now, you have to type in the number you want to text, plus embark, plus the stop ID number and the route number. So now we're going to simplify that and make it even easier to use. So that'll be coming later this year as well. Connected to that is also bus stop information. Our customers have told us that they'd like to see more information at the stop. And this is especially important to people who are considering to use the bus that doesn't currently use it now. So over the last few years, we've been developing this, and we've been working to refine it and to make it as practical to implement as possible, because we do have nearly 1,400 bus stops. So producing a sign for each one is definitely a large feat, but I'm proud to report that we've got all of the signs produced in a production digital state, and we are working now to secure a production company who will produce the signs, and then we'll work with our scheduling and planning department who maintain the bus stops to get those installed later this year. With that, we'll include a QR code and instructions for how to do that texting feature at the stop. So hopefully we'll see, again, that tool utilized much greater and also be able to influence people who are on the fence about riding transit to definitely give it a try. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just wanted to say, nice work with the bus stops. That's important. And sounds like that was pretty labor intensive on you all's part too. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Good report. All right. Any items from the trustees? Then we need to adjourn for executive session.